Hello and welcome to etvfsi.com, and this is a special series where we are going to discuss with the banker and tech experts in terms of a digital dialogue and trying to understand how the BFSI companies are using digital and what kind of aspects they are looking at of digital. So glad to have two gentlemen here with me, and let me introduce them to you. My first speaker for this particular discussion is Mr. Bhaskar Babu, the MD and CEO of Suryodaya Small Finance Bank. Mr. Babu, glad to have you. And my next speaker is Mr. Shirish Ganeshan from Backbase. Shirish, glad to have you.
Hi, Amol. Glad to be on this panel with you and Mr. Bhaskar. The pleasure is mine.
Great. So to begin with, Bhaskar sir, I will come to you first. Small finance bank and payment banks were far more aggressive compared to traditional banks and even private banks in adopting technologies because you started late, so you had that benefit. But in last 2 years specifically, every bank has, not used digital, but they have used everything was possible in the digital because they realize that digital bank is the only option to deal with the pandemic. 2 years down the line, when we are almost out of the tunnel and everything is going digital, what do you think are the major learnings of digital will remain with you as a SFB, or you see specifically in the banking industry will be there in the digital which they have adopted aggressively in last 2 years?
To your question in terms of what kind of accelerated in the last 2 years and what more it really portends for the future, probably for the immediate next 2 years, is that generally the assumption was that the low income households will not go as digital as it would happen for a middle income or high income households. This acceleration happened, I would say, circumstance induced to start with. And then that got translated into customer convenience, where the customers felt that one, they're far more comfortable doing it. And some of that, since there was no choice, they took the choice of call in terms of trying out digital transactions, including in terms of their taking money in, which is the inflow itself into the banking account. Many of us started paying our maids, drivers, our support staff, our vegetable vendors, laundry guys, all of us into the digital account, and they started getting comfortable. Once done, I think the acceleration is very fast. Like in all technology changes, it happens. Some of this happens very slowly, and then for some reason, it kind of happens then suddenly and accelerates. I think here it was COVID induced, circumstantial requirement, and we saw that happening big. In the first wave, when the entire thing was shut down in April, May, June of 2020, we had around 6 to 7% of our customers making their payment through various digital mode through UPI transaction, which would have been very difficult had it been started as an initiative by any one particular institution, because the cost of initiation would have been too high, and hence the usual path would have been don't fix what is not broken and continue to do what is in person, physical, specifically in the low income households. Meeting in person had a separate, distinct comfort. This accelerated that, and then when we started doing, the customers also started kind of believing that they could do all the transactions with the financial services provider without necessarily meeting in person. The cash withdrawal started happening to various points through AEPS outside, to ATMs. So what didn't get right years back suddenly happened in the 2 years, which gave to the comfort, which is where you go to and have a tea today or buy a small thing from a mom and pop store or a hole in the wall shop. They're not even saying that the cash preferred. Now probably you're hearing them preferred UPI. Scan it and pay it. I don't need to really handle cash. So I will have to now build upon it for the next 2 years without breaking that trend which has really started. And some of it requires us to break out from the legacy. For instance, in a low income model, specifically in say microfinance, it was assumed that only when you meet them frequently, you will have more customer stickiness, and hence you will be able to understand the customer. But I think all of us have tested and find that this is going to be greatly useful, not purely from a cost management, not purely from your efficiency, but even from a customer experience point of view. I would feel that this will get accelerated much faster than it has happened even in the last 2 years.
Okay, I think meaningful thoughts and great highlights, sir, from that point. Shirish, let me come back to you. And as technology has evolved so much, and the BFSI companies have used it aggressively. How have you seen the adoption of the BFSI companies or specifically banks in last 2 years, and how do you see it going ahead now, considering the lessons that we had of last 2 years?
Right. I think I'd also like to begin on the same note, like Mr. Bhaskar said. I mean, what's happened is there was some sort of a change of mannerism that was forced upon us because of whatever happened in 2020 with COVID. And
Right.
in spite of that, but then there had to be somebody had to pick up the ball and say that, okay, fine, while this has been forced upon us, we will go ahead and we will adapt to this. That's what I have seen in India. While I think even before the pandemic, right from when the small finance banks and the payment banks in India stepped foot in 2015, 16, 17, what has happened is these banks came with not much legacy. They came with a brand, they came with a reputation as, say, a financial institution of a different kind. But what they did not have, like the larger banks, was the legacy or the manual processes or the rigidity that some of the larger banks had. So they adapted to digital slightly better. And over the last 2 years or so, this has been accelerated.
Right.
What was probably, like Mr. Bhaskar put, what was probably crawling at a certain pace has now accelerated. And from a technology company perspective, what we have seen is, again, a lot of requests for end-to-end digitization. While people use this term pretty loosely now, there is some sort of a meaning that's getting associated with end-to-end digitization. Not just in India, we are seeing that globally. And this is something that has, while the seeds were sown even before the pandemic, this has now accelerated. The digitization has accelerated. And what we feel will stay is this. I mean, be it a large bank, be it a small finance bank, or be it institutions globally, we sort of feel that this is going to stay because everyone's got a flavor of digitization. There is a comfort. There has been a good adoption of this, and that is what is likely to stay. But one specific point around this, I still feel that compared to the large public sector and the private sector banks in India, at least from some of the conversations that we are having with a few SFBs, what we feel is that they are possibly the best placed at this point of time to accelerate the digital innovation in the coming years. Because, like I said, lesser legacy, more open ideas around process innovation, and more openness to have a complete ecosystem collaboration. So this is what we think will stay, and this is how I feel is going to be the road ahead over the next, say, 2 to 3 years.
Okay. Bhaskar sir, let me come back to you and ask you something specific about the customer experience. Let's not talk about the transformation and the revolution, these words in the customer experience, because it has gone beyond that, right? And everything is thinking about new ways. In fact, I was thinking about hyper-personalization as a theme for another panel that we was doing on customer experience. So what it takes for a bank, to offer these kind of services to customer experience, because still it was maybe going a little smooth journey. People were looking for a payment transfer. People are looking for, some operational relaxations. But now customers are also looking for end-to-end solutions. They do not want to go to a bank, but want credit or loan automatically, transferred into their account. So how tough it is for a banker, to process everything or automate everything.
In terms of the prioritization becomes a very key thing. You can do all, but you've got to kind of pick and choose which are not only necessarily quick wins, but very impactful ones. Your internal digitization, as Shirish said, so probably we use this word very loosely, that anything that you are kind of automating, anything, we're calling it digital as a cliche. But the fact is that you got to split that into two. One, which you do it for your own efficiency building, which is what you do it for your own controls. I think that would have happened either ways. Probably a little got more accelerated, but the pace is not exponentially increased. But from a customer experience point of view, whatever you have got delivered, you would have thought that it was not really required on account of two. One, specifically when you are catering to the low-income household, the fear of losing in touch with the customer forces you to continue to do what you are doing well, and assuming that this will continue to go on for some time, and you never wanted to take the lead. So this forced everybody to become leaders in terms of take this initiative. So today, when a small microfinance loan of about 25,000 rupees, we had processes in terms of meeting the customer once, twice, right? But the fact is that we have somewhere along the way, we forgot that the customer has also got graduated. The customer does not want to be treated as a class 1 student when they already graduated into college. So here, kind of once the tool was available, and one of the big discoveries in this phase was that at the household level, customers had actually become financially digital. It is a son and the daughter working somewhere else, and who's a teenager, probably who's kind of started working, have become, but the lady of the household, who's typically the microfinance customer, didn't. So the moment we started kind of offering these products, then it kind of became, what is in it for me got handset? It is a convenience, it is a speed, and I don't really need to do things in the same original way. and the safety factor was comfortably built, or the comfort building happened through the household. So these two kind of merging is what now today, from a customer wants a loan, we want to be in a position where once you are an customer for us, when you acquire a customer, probably know that really still requires a little bit of physical, a little bit of a digital, which kind of, which is now usually called as a digital mode. But once the customer is your customer, why do you want to really repeat the same thing as if you didn't know the customer at all? The customer requires a loan. Once she has become a customer, she has established a track record. Just go and get an option where she can log into your app and request for a loan, kind of press the loan and send a link. And you go to many restaurants today, they ask you for a mobile number and they don't give you a physical printout at all. It helps both ways. One, I don't really need to carry to submit to my organization what kind of expenses I spend. Equally important is that it's available whenever you click and then forward it to the team, and then they take a printout if required, or kind of they store it and do it. So this acceleration is what we have seen, Amol. In terms of the customer seeking it, customer wanting it, it is not now anymore forced on the customer to do something which is for your convenience. The customer found it extremely useful, and that, I think, acceleration is what really moving it. If you have to really put a small kind of analogy into it, suppose you have taken a home loan 10 years back and you have been paying very well, then you, when you wanted a top up of it, or the bank was offering a top up, the process repeated itself. Valuation of the property and so on and so forth. Now we are forced, and the competition is so high, both the intensity of the competition and the requirement of the customer has forced you to say that cut all the processes which are kind of slack in the whole thing. Every process typically has 60 to 70% of waste, but it keeps happening even though the world has changed because we are used to doing it. So now we are saying that no, you don't have a choice of really repeating the 60-70%. So that got taken out, and so probably now we're all operating at removed 70% at 3 times more efficiency than we're operating. So we rolled out a small ticket OD product for our existing customer. 3 lakh customers were acquired purely with one kind of meeting, which is a customer authenticating that yes, she wants a loan and she wants to take the loan, and money was moved into her bank account. She kind of withdraws it. She repays it whenever she wants. This product, given that the size is 5 to 15,000 rupees, had it been done on a physical contact basis, would not be profitable for us, would not be convenient for the customer. That merging of the convenience of both and utility for both is what we have seen. And we would see that much more in the products have become far more simplified, not only in loans. Today, I think many of us have got activated into mutual funds. If you have to do even a SIP, not even a SIP, you want to do a one-time transaction of 1,000 rupees, you can do it with a click button. And not just one app and 2 apps. I think it has almost become a hygiene factor. Now, if you expect anybody to go to a mutual fund or kind of a distributor office, fill up the form, I think the whole thing has moved, not in tier 1 towns, tier 2, tier 3.
Okay. A meaningful one, sir. So, Shirish, on tech perspective here, how has been the shift? Are you facing a lot of challenges in terms of adopting infrastructure? Because the shift is amazing, shift is remarkable. Suddenly from data center to cloud, from data to AI, and again machine learning, using all this so that they will ensure that the automation happens. So how do you see the overall shift, and what kind of challenges that the banks are facing or the BFSI companies are facing in terms of adopting all this emerging or the new technology so that they can serve their customers better?
Right, very valid question actually. So again, I'll just go back to one point that I made when I answered your previous question, Amol. So it's all about handling legacy better. So for the slightly, I don't want to call banks like Surya the new age institutions, because they have a legacy since a long time. But when you talk about from a SFB perspective, a small finance bank perspective, they've been around for now less than 10 years. So the amount of legacy that they carry and the amount of flexibility that they show to adopt to new age things. I wouldn't call them new age anymore, but when you're talking about, say, microservices in technology, when you're talking about moving to cloud, these are things that they are more aligned with. And considering that also provides a differentiation factor compared to some of these larger banks, I think the willingness and the adaptability is higher when you talk about the SFBs and the payment banks. Even larger banks are now getting into the groove. They are also trying to do away with as much legacy as possible. Just to give you an example, when you're talking, I think Mr. Bhaskar was just talking about the process optimization, about opening accounts and having a large form filled in the past. So, that's something that even we have seen. Digital onboarding is something now. It is maybe somebody who's an 18-year-old now and opens a bank account will in his or her lifetime never see a form. Go to the bank, go to one counter, ask for a form, fill it up, give two photographs. All these things are now automated. All these things are completely digitized. And you can actually just sit at your house, scan a QR code on the bank's website, access a complete digital account opening form online, eKYC, vKYC, everything is done online. So these are the kind of shifts and plunges that banks have already taken. Now, from a technology company perspective, what do we have to do is, one, convince banks that, look, this is in the longer run going to be a good option for you, not just from a differentiation perspective, because I think everyone has gone towards it, but even from a cost perspective, not just from the technology cost, but also the savings that it will bring to the table when you go completely digital. So that's one point where I think we work on convincing the banks or aligning with the banks that we are working with. Second is obviously convincing them that, look, once everything has moved digital, you are talking about security or cyber security. So that's a point that many banks talk about. So other than processes, other than doing away with legacy, security is a concern that comes across quite a bit. And obviously, everyone needs the blessings of the regulator to make sure that the production environment and the customer data can be completely on cloud. So the willingness is there. We are seeing a movement. We are having a lot of conversations, even at Backbase, with banks in India, banks globally, about moving into the clouds of the world, into the different, moving different applications to cloud. But it is just the last mile that we are all now traveling together to make sure that all these hassles are completely put away.
Noted your points, Shirish, on that application front. I remember that whenever I visited a branch, I at least filled forms, for of 2-3 people. Okay. And I always ensured whenever I visited a bank, I will carry a pen with a thin pointed, thin point, because the brackets are so small.
Yeah.
Sometimes you could not, fix your name into it. So I think all that has been changing, and perhaps the Gen Z, will not even know about it, that you have to, fill maybe 4 or 5 pages of application forms. So I think meaningful insights here, Shirish. So Bhaskar sir, let me come back to you and, ask you a very important questions on the business front. So every bank has, its own app now. In fact, they are trying to race with the super app model and putting everything on a digital. In business terms, how has it been helping you? I'm so sure that you are opening more accounts with digital, you're disbursing more loans with digital, you're reaching out to more people with digital. How is it helping you in terms of business, revenue, profitability? Have you by any chance done any analytics there on that front?
Invariably across, reflecting the environment, 80% of the transactions happen digitally.
Right.
I think it gets accelerated to 90, not because you're kind of even pushing it. Earlier, it used to be some of the leading private sector banks used to nudge the customer not to come inside the branch premises, but rather use the ATM. That would have been a 15 years back exercise. Then they kind of push to do the rest of the transactions through your mobile banking, and they made it a lot more convenient. Now it is not that you will have to nudge. The customer doesn't want to really come. And now the banks will have to, at some point, the circle will turn around and you will start taking excessive initiatives to request customers and invite customers to come and meet up with you. So you don't really need to kind of go on the bank. The first one was the bank said, so please do it digitally. So it will accelerate in such a manner that over a period of time we'll all be working on strategies in terms of how do I really make the customer or a depositor or a loanee to kind of have an interaction with us in person. Because it's not going to kind of go away. We will start seeking rather than the customer seeking earlier. And what will likely to happen is that one, I think it was a war for new customers. And in some banking way, it became in terms of a leaking bucket. You are not really truly taking care of your existing customers end to end, but you are focusing more in terms of getting more and more customers. Today, with all the digital capabilities available, with multiple things, including analytics being used meaningfully, you will start focusing in terms of deepening relationship with the customers much more as a strategy than simply acquiring more and more customers. Okay. Even a small finance bank like us, currently on a statistical basis, I cater to 1 out of every 165 households in the country. And that to me is a large number. And the rate of customer acquiring now will probably cater into 1% of the entire Indian households in 2 years, 3 years time. That's numbers on one side. But do we really cater meaningfully to this 1% of the household, or is it just the two products that they kind of product push, which is driving the business? And as long as we're getting growth of 25, 30, 35%, we probably never used any meaningful analysis and then probably analytics to say what more can you do for the customers for them. Like in many things that happens in digitally, we get connected to people 30,000 miles away and not get connected to people who are 30 meters away. This, I think, was what now we started realizing and kind of saying, can you really make the customer experience super excellent for your existing customers? Because you've taken all the efforts to get them in, kind of delivered one product, two products, and now don't cross-sell products. You don't sell because of what you have to sell. Start buying products for the customer. The moment you shift the focus from selling to buying for the customer, then it becomes a win-win. And with a win-win, there will be no stopping. You can be profitable, they can be profitable. I think that is where it's also leading to collaborations. Nobody is now looking at a fintech or a bank collaboration who owns the customer. Now, today, customer is not going to be owned by an entity which is acquiring or the entity which is servicing. The customer will be owned by a person who is going to be delivering them customer experience. I think that kind of hard truth is what kind of we all started realizing and then started deepening the relationship more than just about getting more and more customers.
Absolutely, absolutely. I will come back to you specifically on the fintech partnerships. But Shirish, let me come back to you, and I don't have a straightforward question here, Shirish. But what I see is even the legacy banks are facing a lot of challenges, and if you must have seen the HDFC as one of the example. I mean, it's okay if you don't name the bank because that would be a different analogy here. But you saw regulations against the data center norms of HDFC, the challenges that took place. Challenges happened there because of the data center issues. What I want to understand from you is, there is a lot of complexity also while adopting technologies. The one CTO, say, of a bank will adopt ABC technology. Suddenly there will be an update, and sometimes he has gone. And there are different layers. Everything is doing works in different patches. What is the solution here? Because sometimes the bankers doesn't know what is happening at the end, and perhaps if a large bank faces some issues, and the regulator is also inspecting what went wrong, what could be the great strategy for banks, in terms of having a great seamless technology adoption? Because I see a lot of challenges also while adopting technologies.
So I think you posed a very tough question to me. I'll tell you why, because this is a question that technology folks and banking folks, I mean, people who are much more experienced than me are also trying to grapple with. But I'll just take a shot at it with my 2 cents here. I just have 2 primary thoughts. So I think, again, where I'm coming from is that I know I've been harping on the legacy aspect since the start of this, but that's where I think over the last decade or so, we have been trying to convince different banks that, look, I mean, legacy applications served their purpose. Obviously, I mean, there is a coming of age when you're talking about different sorts of applications. By legacy, I mean large single monolithic applications. The time for them has sort of gone. Now, 2 aspects to this. One is in terms of the number of applications, and 2, the type of applications. In both, there can be some sort of a refinement or a sharpening, in my view. By number, what do I mean is, look, I mean, the emergence of fintechs has obviously helped digitization, as we call it now, leaps and bounds. What it has done is it has enabled everyone, I mean, anyone who's sitting even say 30,000 kilometers away to have a relationship with you. Same way, I mean, there is a concept that everybody used to go to a branch at one point of time. Then there was something innovative. I think banks like Suryodaya also came up with that, saying that banking at your doorstep. So more than having people at your branch, you would go to their doorstep. Now, what's happened is all of this is, I won't say killed, but at least being complemented well by the digital side of things. Fintechs have helped this. But what fintechs bring as a challenge to the table is there are multiple fintechs that you require for doing different point things. So eKYC, vKYC, you would have one separate fintech vendor. Then for say an e-signature, you would have one separate fintech vendor. That's where the value or the complete collaborative nature of a platform comes to the fore. Now, that's something that very frankly, at my level, I've been trying to talk to banks about bringing everything onto one single platform. So you have these different fintech platforms, but have a single orchestration for them. So ultimately, your data center loads and everything won't get affected too much. And that's why the question of cloud comes into the picture, which brings me to the second aspect of my talk, which is not the number of applications, but the type of applications. You have applications that have, say, that are microservices ready, that are cloud native, and cloud providers have also evolved a lot over the last few years to make sure that, say, peaks and troughs of transactions are considered. I think there is a hyperscaler that is there in all of these cloud applications today to ensure that you don't have to have a certain constant bandwidth or a certain fixed number of boxes to handle your transaction. So that's where I think where I would like to come in and say is that try to focus on making your architecture slightly cleaner by having, say, I won't say lesser number of applications, but having it put together in a way that you're operating all of them, say, via a single platform if possible, or if not, at least a single platform, have a core, have a digital backbone, and have all of them integrated or working with them. And second, try to move towards, say, applications that are cloud native, that are microservices, because then you don't have to go in for single large upgrade programs. You can go in for an upgrade microservice by microservice too. Hassles will remain. There is no single way to say that this is going to solve all the problems, but at least that reduces the complexities to quite a large extent.
Okay. Noted your points. Uh, uh, so Bhaskar sir, I have a again very important question on digital front. We discussed the great benefits of digital. What if I ask you a question? What are the what you can say? What is wrong with digital, or what are the benefits that you don't see of digital? If you have any views there.
Safety becomes an extremely important thing. So what happens is more so, irrespective of whatever we are, if I do a 200 rupee transaction, it didn't really go through. I don't then know kind of know whom to contact. If an IMPS UPI transaction fails, where like I'm using Paytm to pay Jio, and for me say the transaction didn't go through, I go to kind of Jio and file in. They say no, contact your application provider or your payment gateway, and then they say that no, we have transferred it. So then you are stuck. If it is one transaction, then you kind of get irritated and leave it at that. But if imagine instead of 200 rupees, it was a 20,000 rupees transaction.
Yes.
And I don't know where to really go to. So the customer service mechanism need not necessarily only be reactive. I triggered a transaction. It has not got credited to Mol's account. The bank should be kind of have the infrastructure as Shri was mentioning. So can I reach out to both of them and say, you transfer the money, don't worry, it is in process, we'll get back to you. Now today it requires the customer to initiate it. So like if you look at all our apps, whether mobile or internet banking, while it is easy to do so many things, I have still not come across a bank app, either mobile or internet banking, where lodging a complaint is also as easy. And getting a reward on the day will request you to expect you to key in your account number, your kind of transaction reference code. Well, I don't even know where to go and really search for a reference code and then put it. Right? I'm sure that all of us as banks have all the data behind where we can fetch it ourselves. As I know all the transactions that Amol did or Bhaskar did and reach out to me. So I think that is what not really kind of good and specifically hurts people where they don't have even wherewithal to kind of know who to contact and you don't want to be calling up a number and put on hold for 20 minutes. And then kind of disconnecting and leaving it at that. So we have to address those points in terms of anything which is not happening. We address preferably proactively. You kind of transfer the money, it has not got credited. Hey, hold on. So we are working on it. We'll get back to you. At least you know for sure. At least my problem is already known. And then make sure that you are reverting to me. Even with us, when a customer complains, they go to the customer service department. Then we start identifying the problem and solving it. But that happens only after the customer has thrown the problem at you. And the irritation that the customer goes through between that and the way in which he has to reach you has to be really smooth. And I think that is what really not good in this step. And specifically, kind of this becomes a big source of discouragement to an extent of never to try again for a low income household. And in a hurry, they're transferring 5,000 rupees to the son who's in, say, Bombay, and the customer is in Surat, and it has not gone through. You don't really kind of expect them to have the remaining balance and 5,000 rupees and do the transaction and wait for reconciliation of the first transaction. So you'll have to bring in a humongous amount of sensitivity of not saying that within 2 days it will be reversed, within 7 days it will be reversed. No good. So it has to be as quick as the transaction happens. I think among that, I would say that it's kind of has to be addressed very, very. One is technology, but beyond technology is that you have to be passionate about identifying the pains that the customer really go through. Specifically where the balance is not there in the account, that they can trigger another transaction.
think a very very valid point, sir, and thank you for being so bold on actually raising this. This actually happens at many cases, and I think the reconciliation settlement actually sometimes doesn't happen. They say 7 days, 3 days, 40 days, but sometimes it doesn't happen. Sometimes you pay twice to the merchant, assuming that you will get money automated, but it's not happening. I think and I think banks should look at here, or the tech companies also, in the future consequences of the incidents or the payment. A very very valid point, sir. So let me take one last question with both of you, and that is specifically on the partnerships with fintechs and neobanks. So Shirish, let me bring you here and try to understand from you, how do you view the emergence of neobank? They're calling themselves a digital bank. The emergence of fintech, they have everything in terms of the technology and the reach which they can do with the partnerships with banks. So how do you see the emergence of the new tech companies, specifically in the BFSI segment?
Like you rightly said, they have everything except the license from the regulator at this point of time. So that is something that, I mean, I think what I look at it as, see, it's been in a way, I mean, if you look at it from one prism, it's been a boon to the sector, because what it has done is it's opened up a lot of realm of opportunities. By opportunities, again, I mean that the reach has increased, and with digital, you don't really need to have people going from one place to another to get something done. While obviously, like Mr. Bhaskar rightly pointed out, there are still a few banes of digitization, but I do feel that there are a lot more advantages that have come to the table with that. So like I was saying, so in terms of what are the ecosystem, I would call this as the neo banking ecosystem more than the fintechs and the neo banking players. So we've seen a lot of entrants coming in the retail space, in the SME space. One thing very common about all of them is none of them are, say, completely universal. By universal, I would say that nobody comes and says that we do everything. Everyone comes in with a certain niche. Somebody says, yes, we address the SME space well. There are some others who say that within SME we do, or within corporate we do only trade finance. There are some who are focusing on cards, but the maximum number of entrants you've seen in the payments and the lending space, keeping in terms with the trends that you've seen in terms of consumer behavior. So more than these players coming in because of whatever regulatory restrictions, I've seen, or rather what we've seen is there is a rather higher propensity for partnership that has come from the traditional banking players. So now you see that there is a better adoption of tech with the, traditional IT providers or the traditional banking solution providers. Not just that, there is no question of whose customer is it. The banks are now ready to partner with the neo banks, digi banks, or whatever you call them now. So more or less, I mean, if you see, we are now moving towards the possibility of at least having the first digital bank also. I mean, that could possibly be the future, with things opening up and with mindsets also opening up, and the banking ecosystem becoming a slightly larger ecosystem than it used to be previously.
Noted your points. So Bhaskar sir, I have the same question. Obviously, the fintech, neobank, and the tech companies or the tech fins, where I'm sure you will have a lot of partnerships. But let me spin it a bit for you. So where do you think this collaboration will go? I mean, initially what started as a competition now turned into a collaboration, and now the fintechs and tech has everything. The license, you have license and technology as well now. So where this collaboration will go?
Very difficult to kind of visualize at this point of time. Everybody is fighting for the customer space. The fintechs in their own niche, if somebody is in student finance, they become so focused, the focus wins. So they think everything that the student would think, what the student would want, and they're building all of that ecosystem into that. So to that extent, it kind of they become specialists. They kind of able to address the customer experience, the controls, probably even the risk, far better than probably a bank also as a product will do. So it makes sense to kind of collaborate together, and they know you right there. One substantial change that has happened is that now partnerships are not looked at with suspicion, because if you kind of know any one of the partners does not really play fair, it is not really impacting only that partnership. That becomes kind of the branding for that entity for all future partnerships. So if partnerships where the collaboration were the way to go, all of us are pretty clear that you have to play fair and it has to be a win-win. It's not even kind of pushing somebody to a point, even if you can call the shots. It is not no more a one strong versus weak. Irrespective of the size, people are now kind of taking all the partnerships as equals. How the future will pan out, who will own the customer is a billion-dollar question. Right? Will the student as he graduates, will the bank own it, or will the fintech graduate itself to kind of cater to the requirements? So I don't think there is a clear, visible answer for it at this point of time. So what we're saying is that everybody says that, okay, get the customer, acquire, keep servicing it. The markets are so large, so don't bother about. So who is going to own, and then that will figure it out as you go along. So I think we're all playing that at this point of time with credible partners.
Sure, I think meaningful answer and meaningful perspective from both of you. So thank you so much, gentlemen, for sharing your perspective on the CTP FSI, digital dialogue series, and giving us a perspective about not just happening in the industry, but what may happen. So thank you so much, Mr. Babu and Mr. Ganeshan, for your time. Thank you so much.